Imagine a world where a single finger slipping on a keyboard could erase the lifetime savings of every person in this city. On the 42nd floor of the Sterling Vane Tower, that nightmare just became a reality, and in the middle of the carnage,
they don't know what they're playing with.
across the street, separated by nothing but 3 inches of bulletproof glass, a shadow stood motionless in the freezing rain. It was Silas Richardson, 45 years old homeless man wearing a rag coat held together by duct tape and shoes that had seen more miles than a long-haul truck. While the geniuses upstairs were losing their minds, Silas was doing the one thing no one else dared to do. He was laughing. He wasn't just watching the prices drop. He was counting the milliseconds between the trades. He leaned his head against the cold glass and whispered to the wind, "The bridge is broken." It was 7:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the closing bell. The air was thick with the scent of $400 an ounce cologne, and the static of 100 humming computer servers. A 17-years-old junior trader named Toby, a kid with an Ivy League degree, just executed a high-frequency sell order. But as he looked at the screen, his blood turned cold. He hadn't typed $1 million, he had accidentally hit a macro key that added 5 extra zeros. $100 billion. $100 billion of stock that didn't exist was now flooding the market. In an instant, the trading floor erupted, like a beehive being hit by a sledgehammer. The green lines representing the world's biggest tech companies on the giant monitoring screen immediately turned into a flash clash. It didn't just dip, they fell like stones off a cliff. The head of trading, Marcus Thorne, a man who hadn't smiled since 1998, burst out of his glass office. "Cancel the order," he screamed. But Toby's hands were shaking so hard he couldn't even grip the mouse. Unaware to Marcus Thorne, karma was coming to hit him hard. The empire he had built on the backs of others was finally beginning to crumble, and the debt he owed the universe was being called in, all at once. While they looked at the screens in horror, they failed to look out the window. To the only man who possessed the secret to their problem. Someone they wouldn't even allow through the front door. How is it possible that a $100 billion empire, protected by the world's most advanced firewalls and brightest minds, could be brought to its knees by a single shaking finger? 3 years ago, Silas lived in a high skyscraper directly opposite the Sterling Vane Tower, a life that felt untouchable. But today, the workers inside think he is just another ghost on the sidewalk. They have no idea he is carrying a secret that could shatter Wall Street, a heavy secret Marcus Thorne thought he had buried. Silas watched the building he designed like a fallen king watching his stolen castle. He saw the new geniuses walk in with their $2,000 suits to sit at $5,000 mahogany desks. He saw them try to master the beast he had created, Project Phoenix, a trading algorithm so complex it could predict the future, but so fragile it could destroy the world's economy if it ever caught a virus. Before those 3 years on the street, Silas had it all. A penthouse overlooking Central Park, a wife named Sarah whose laughter filled his quietest moments, and a young daughter Mia who used to draw magic math on his napkins. He was a billionaire in spirit and in pocket. But in the city of gold, the higher you climb, the harder the wind blows. It happened just months before Silas was forced out of his high-ranking CEO position on a rainy Tuesday night, much like today. He was driving home with his family from a celebratory dinner, when a faulty brake line and a slick road met a truck that didn't stop. In one heartbeat.
What the?
As the only surviving soul, Silas's world didn't just crash, it evaporated. He didn't lose his money first, he lost his reason to hold on to it. After the funeral, the numbers on his trading screens stopped making sense. He looked at the billions of dollars he moved every day and realized they couldn't buy back a single second of the laughter he had lost. Just imagine. His colleagues called it a mental break. His board of directors called it liability. Within a year, they had used his grief to push him out of the company. They took his patents, his seat, and eventually, his home. Silas didn't fight back. He didn't want the penthouse if Sarah and Mia weren't in it. He took a single cardboard box of books full of Mia's magic math drawings and walked into the rain. He didn't go into hiding. He went into the shadows because the light of his old life was too bright to bear. And today, the beast had finally woken up. Upstairs, Toby was breaking down in tears, while Marcus, the man who owned the empire, was roaring in a blind rage, watching his $100 billion world turn to ash. But karma has a quiet voice. But at that same moment, it was finally Silas's turn to speak. Downstairs, Silas felt a familiar spark in his chest. It was the same spark he felt when he first wrote the codes that made his daughter start drawing magic maths. It was a call for help from his own creation. He stood up from his cardboard box, his joints creaking like an old door, and looked at the security guards blocking the marble entrance. The air-conditioned chill hit his face, a sharp contrast to the humid, gasoline-soaked air of the street. Without looking at the $10 million art hanging on the glass walls, he looked at the chaos. A security guard named Jimmy Washington, 6'4" with a chest like a fridge, stepped into his path. "Sir, you can't be here. Move along." But Silas didn't move or back down. He reached into his filthy pocket and pulled out a small, dented silver stopwatch. It was stopped at exactly 4 minutes 13 seconds, the moment his world ended 3 years ago. He held it up, his hand steady as a mountain. "You have exactly 8 minutes before the Phoenix algorithm hits the hard limit and triggers an unrecoverable sell-off. Tell Marcus Thorne that the architect is in the lobby. And tell him, the ghost has come back to fix his machine." The guard laughed, but then he saw Silas's eyes. They weren't the eyes of a broken man. They were the eyes of a man who saw through the walls and into the very electricity of the building. 5 minutes later, the elevator dings. The doors open. Marcus Thorne, the king of Wall Street, his face as white as his silk shirt. He glanced at his 2 bodyguards, then back at Silas. And the realization hit him like a physical blow. He remembered the morning. Stepping out of his bulletproof, tinted glass Hilux, walking straight past Silas at the entrance. Silas had reached out, his mouth wide open, trying to warn him. Trying to tell him he'd seen someone standing at the very top of the tower. But Marcus short him up. "Ghost, is this your new style of begging?" He hadn't even looked back. He'd treated the architect like a ghost. And now, he's about to face the unbearable shame. Because Silas Richardson was the only reason Marcus would still have a home in New York City tonight. And for the first time in a decade, Marcus Thorne feels a cold shiver of fear. He leads Silas through the main trading floor. 100 traders stop. The shouting dies down immediately. The only sound is the click-clack of Silas's worn-out boots on the Italian marble. He walks straight to the center console where Toby is hyperventilating. The kid looks up at the homeless man, then at his boss, confused. "Move, Toby. Give him the terminal." Silas doesn't sit down. He stands over the keyboard like a conductor before an orchestra. He places the silver stopwatch next to the monitor. On the main screen, the global index wasn't just falling, it was evaporating. Red candles cascaded down the monitors like a digital bloodbath. "It's an algorithmic feedback loop." Toby screamed, his $2,000 suit drenched in perspiration. "We've tried the kill switch 4 times. We've tried the overrides. Why is it still selling?" Marcus added. Silas squinted at the scrolling green lines of code on the secondary monitor, the engine behind the trade. To the traders, it was a mess of variables. To Silas, who had spent a previous life as a theoretical physicist before the world chewed him up, it was a poem with a glaring typo. "You were typing the wrong code," Silas said quietly. "The recursive loop," he stepped forward, his shadow falling over the terminal. "The high-frequency algorithm is calculating the inflation hedge based on a 360-day calendar year, but the liquidity check is running on a 365-day Gregorian leap year cycle. Every 5 seconds, the system finds a missing 5 days of money. It thinks $100 billion has vanished, so it's selling everything to cover a debt that doesn't exist." "Mr. Thorne, who was on the rooftop earlier today?" Silas added with a suspicious piercing voice. "Silas, I don't know. Are you sure of what you're saying?" Silas' eyes locked on Marcus. "Mr. Thorne, swear that you don't know who's on the rooftop." "Hey, that's impossible," the lead developer stammered. "The code is perfect." "The code is perfect," Silas whispered, his fingers hovering over the mechanical keyboard. "The logic is flawed. Look at this." With a sequence of keystrokes that sounded like a drum roll, Silas entered a single string of code command. \delta L equals \int slash 365 days slash 360 days DTY equals 0. He hit enter. For 3 seconds, the room stayed silent. Then, the red candles stopped. A single green flicker appeared at the bottom of the screen. Then, another. The $100 billion hole in the global ledger began to seal itself. Suddenly, the trading floor went silent. The red flashing lights died out. On the main monitor, the $100 billion error hadn't just been fixed, it had been reversed. Silas hadn't just saved the company. He had executed a counter-trade that turned the crash into a profit. Marcus Thorne looked at the screen, then back at the man in the tattered coat. Marcus leaned forward, his voice trembling. "Silas, I don't know what to say. The board, they'll give you anything. $1 million bonus, your old office back, a car, a house. Just name your price." But Silas didn't even look up. He was busy picking up the small silver stopwatch from the desk. He wiped a smudge of dust off the glass and tucked it back into his deep, filthy pocket. As he looked at Marcus's bare ring finger, he began, "That's your problem, Marcus. You still don't get it. You think lives are like stocks, that if one fails, you just buy another. You've never been married, have you? You've never sat up at 3 a.m. tracing magic math with a daughter who thinks you're a superhero. Didn't you remember the day I was pushed out of this building? While you were counting my shares, I only asked for one thing, to have my watch back. The watch that timed my daughter's first steps. You think everything has a price tag because you've never owned anything that money couldn't buy. I had the penthouse. I had the billions. And none of it could stop a rainy Tuesday night from taking my world away." Silas turned toward the elevator, his worn-out boots squeaking on the pristine floor. Marcus chased after him. "Wait. At least let me get you a hotel. A meal. You can't go back out there." Silas stopped and looked back over his shoulder. A small, sad smile touched his lips. "You call this out there? Marcus, I've never felt this present. I'm not out there anymore. I'm finally home. If you learned one thing today, let it be this: that some secrets are worth more than gold. And some men are impossible to buy. Never judge the person sitting at the bottom of the ladder. They might be the only ones holding it steady, because, you see, when you lose everything, the shadows stop being scary, they become honest. In this tower, you've built a sun made of gold, but it's so bright that it made you blind. I'd rather stay in the dark and see clearly, than live in your light and see nothing at all." Silas walked out of the sterling veined tower back into the rain. As he sat back down on his cardboard box, he didn't just look at the building. He looked at Marcus through the glass. And for the first time, Silas wasn't the only one who knew why he was laughing. He leaned his head against the cold glass and watched the billionaires celebrate through the window. He didn't want their money, but he already saved the only thing that mattered, the memory of a man who could see what no one else could. We live in a world that judges a man by the brand of his watch, rather than the character of the hand that wears it. We ignore the genius in the shadows because they don't look like us. But remember, talent hits a target no one else can hit, but genius hits a target no one else can even see. Silas looked up at the rooftop one last time, because fixing the machine was easy, but stopping the person who hacked it? That was a story for another rainy Tuesday. If this story of the ghost architect deserves part 2, and if it touched your heart, please put your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel. We are uncovering the world's most incredible twists of fate, where the invisible becomes indispensable. And if you want to see a different kind of justice, how a simple janitor took down a corrupt hospital board, quickly click the video on your screen now with your left thumb and watch the story of Leo Rossi, the hidden genius.